Hi, welcome everybody to the Design for Circularity webinar, part of the Digitally Circular webinar series. I'm really excited about today's lineup of speakers and what we will be talking about. Circularity is an important topic in our time, circular economy, and how we approach our usage of resources. And design is one very important element of that, designing products, designing services. And I think we have today a really good lineup of speakers and later a panel to discuss this topic in more detail. Before we jump into the webinar, I have a couple of topics. We will have a panel later, as I mentioned. So if you have questions throughout the presentations, feel free to put your questions into the Q&A tab of the Zoom panel. Please use the Q&A tab so that we can find your questions easier than in the chat. In addition to that, you have a chat that you can use. And in order to test that out, I would like all of you to put in, where are you joining from today? And what's your background? What's your interest for being here today? So if you would click on the chat and type in from where you're joining today and what your interest is, and then I'll come back to that later. Perfect. As mentioned, we have 4 speakers today. The order is not necessarily as you see it here on the screen. So Rebecca from WWF Germany will start with a short introduction on the topic and how WWF sees the topic. Then we will have Tapani from the Taival team to give us a little bit of a background, what circular design is, what the approach is. Then we will have Mikko to talk about circular design at UPM and how they approach it. And then finally, Talke will be talking about circular design and circular products and materials in the chemicals industry at BASF. Before we jump into that, maybe a couple of words, and I promise I'll keep it very brief, about Taival, who we are and why are we organizing this webinar. Taival is an advisory company. We're now 5 years old. We basically work on the intersection between strategy, data, circular economy, and more broadly, sustainability, and design and ecosystems. As we see that these are the strategic game changers of the future. So these topics will change in the strategic context how companies will be operating in the future. To give you a little bit of a flavor of what we're doing, and as said, I promise to be quick. One thing we are doing together with WWF is the circular economy rating, where we basically look at how circularity is strategically anchored within the organization across various dimensions, and how that then leads to, or how that can be improved going forward. Another topic we've been working on is the plastics circle in the Helsinki, or the capital region, the Helsinki region in Lahti, where we basically looked at the plastics ecosystem. We developed a plastic ecosystem operating model outlining who are the key players along the plastics value chain, how are these players interacting, how are these players basically working together along the value chain. And then we developed a data model on top of that to understand what are the material flows throughout the different stages of the value chain in the Helsinki region at Lahti, and what is basically the way how we can optimize and reach the 80% packaging plastic circulation target that the city of Helsinki has been setting for itself by optimizing different stages, from the recycling of the households to the use of recycled plastics and so on. So these are 2 examples of what we've been doing. Happy to talk more about what Taival does. Please feel free to reach out so that we can discuss more about that. But now let's move on to the actual core of the webinar, to our presentations and then the panel. I'm very happy to first welcome Rebecca on stage. She's basically a circular economy program lead for the circular economy program at WWF in Germany, part of the economy and markets team. And Rebecca has been working in many initiatives around circular economy, and we've been working jointly on the circular economy rating. With that, Rebecca, I'll hand over to you for your presentation.
Thank you, and good morning from me. So now, thank you, Michael. Now I can share. Yes, happy to be here. So as Michael said, Rebecca Tauer, my name, and I'm here in Berlin in Germany. I work for WWF Germany as a program lead to circular economy, and happy to give a short intro on the circular economy, our views, and the link to this interesting topic, design, today. So my view is that our economic system has a design problem. So starting out with that and having a quick look why that is. So if we have a look at our current economic system, it leads to considerable waste, as you all know, and the overuse of resources. And here are a few examples. So currently today, only 13% of materials that we use in Europe come from recycled materials. An average manufactured product or asset only lasts 9 years. And the average car in Europe is parked 92% of the time. Europeans consume 26 kilograms of textiles every year and discard 11 of those. And global waste is expected to grow from 2 billion a few years ago to 3.4 billion in 2050. So huge waste of resources, huge pile of waste, and this way of living is really driving our planet out of a safe operating space. So many of you know these numbers. We currently use 1.75 Earths in resources. This is global. If we look at our Western way of living, it's actually closer to 3 planets. And this means we're actually overusing the biocapacity of our planet. This is actually quite a recent development. We have tripled the use of resources since 1970. So it's a very new development in the way of living. And this resource consumption is driving climate change and biodiversity loss. So two very important topics. 50% of global greenhouse gases are coming from resource production and extraction. And this is also leading to 90% of biodiversity loss and freshwater stress. So when we have a look at this, we need to obviously find a solution. And we believe that the circular economy is a key lever, has huge potential to address these issues. When we have a look at circular economy, we can address several different dimensions. Of course, these environmental problems that I've already touched on. We can reduce waste, we can reduce resource extraction and therefore protect and hopefully even regenerate natural systems. But also with new economic models and business models, we can drive social change, help people understand sustainability, drive sustainable growth, and for businesses, of course, also drive innovation, secure raw materials, which is so important in today's world. But what do we actually mean when we say circular economy? There's several different aspects I quickly want to touch on. And the first for us, very important, is that we don't look at business models or the waste itself, but we actually look at reducing imports altogether. So we need to reduce resource consumption because we just use too much. And if all countries were to live like we do, we wouldn't even be able to survive for very much longer. So we need to reduce imports altogether, meaning not just reduction in efficiency, but having a look at which products and materials do we need altogether. When we do produce what we need, we need to have a look at more sustainable materials, meaning ideally getting away from fossil fuel-based products and raw materials, but we do also need to consider whether they make sense in the application that we put them in. Products that are produced, we need to intensify them. So having a look at things like sharing business models, because then of course products are used much more often than they are today. If you remember back at the statistic I mentioned at the beginning on cars, and of course also extending product life. So using products for much longer, caring for them, repairing them, and then remanufacturing them before we do anything else. And lastly, of course, what is often the focus of circular economy, recycling material and keeping them in the loop, but keeping them also at high value. So trying to recycle product to product, material to material where it's possible. So all of these aspects are very important for us in the circular economy, and we do feel that this broad view needs to be taken and not just having a look at recycling. So if we do that, we think circular economy can have a huge benefit to climate change and biodiversity protection. So what's the link to design? It's estimated that 80% of the product's environmental impacts are determined at the design stage. This number is huge, but let's have a look why that could be. Just brought with me 3 examples today. So when we have a look at this phone, for example, Fairphone is one of the newer phone companies that's trying to really change the way phones are designed and used. So Fairphone is, for example, designing its phone so it has a much longer lifetime. The latest phone is actually giving out a 5-year guarantee time frame, which is unusual. Normally, phones have a 2-year guarantee time frame. And this is because they know it can be repaired. It's been designed modular. It's been designed that every user can take it apart, that parts can be replaced, and also that it can be upgraded, parts and software. So when we have a look at this, of course, this will reduce how often we buy new phones and therefore also reduce environmental impacts. Very important, especially in electronic, where many rare earths and minerals and metals are used. Having a look at this, these are European pallets used for logistics. Many of you have seen them. Some of you might have used them in your garden for upcycling, which hopefully you've only done when they're actually broken. And this is actually a really interesting system because it's a standardized product. So for designers, maybe not very interesting, but for the circular economy, very important, because as soon as you standardize product sizes, it actually means you can pool them. So, and this is what's worked for many years with these European pallets. There's, I think, 600 million of them in the pool, and ePower manages the system, and you can swap pallet for pallet. So it means everywhere in Europe, this pallet can be used and swapped, and there's no need for every single company or logistics organization to invent their own product. And also there's standards for repairing and designing. So again, enabling these products being used by everyone and reducing resources. Also, it actually reduces the need for transporting them very far to be repaired, for example, because they can be repaired everywhere, again, reducing also logistical routes. And as a last example, it's a German laundry and detergent kind of company, and they have been really focusing on designing their packaging in a more sustainable way. If you look at the standard pouch at the very left, they've actually designed it so the imports are 100% recycled material, and it can be recycled again fully because they use sustainable inks. The pouch is actually dismantleable, like you can take off the screen that you see with the print, and it can be fully recycled. So also this means we can keep materials in the loop. We don't need to produce new products. Another example why circular economy is so important. So to all the designers out there, if there's any on the call, we think that designers have the potential to be transformation agents. And why is that? Normally designers get a job, I guess, design a nice, good-looking product that's functional and, you know, maybe lasts long. But we think that designers really should take a new role, and design needs to be defined in a new way. For example, designers should ask themselves many questions, and I have 3 here. Some of them are maybe hard questions, but we think they're important. And we think designers should ask, can we rethink the product completely? When they take on a job, asking the materials that are meant to be used, are they really sustainable? Should we be using, for example, plastics, or should we be using wood? If we use wood, how long is it going to be staying in the circular economy? Can it be reused? Is it coming from a sustainable source? Is it going to be, when it's at the end of life, is it going to be cascaded and further uses, and so on? So really educating yourself on materials and the environmental impact and their alternatives. And there are probably methods that even designers need to take on board, like life cycle analysis and learning more on this kind of thing. Also rethinking the product completely, like, do we need to produce all of these products? Can the product be designed that maybe it can be used as a product, as a service? How does digitization come in? And can we use digital solutions in combination with the product? So really rethinking the product in a system. So here, I think the role that I want to communicate is that designers need to educate themselves, but especially also have these conversations with your partners and suppliers, and really take a, I guess, influential role in changing the way we think about production. The other thing is to ask whether the product or the service being designed even has a benefit to society. We all need this awareness that we need to produce and consume less. And so we think that a way to do this is to value resources and products more. Like, I think even if we think back 100 years, this was the case. And through design, we can ensure that quality is more important than quantity, and kind of shift back to this kind of attitude. And lastly, when we have products or services that are being designed, don't just think inside the borders or boundaries of your company, but think in circular systems. So what does it mean? It means when you design a product, think about looking back at this pallet pooling, for example. Is there a system when you design a reuse solution where you can efficiently and effectively keep this product in reuse without contributing maybe to more greenhouse gases? And for this, when you think in these systems, whether partners are available, whether recycling solutions are available, you know, have a look at what kind of cooperation do you need to get into in your value chain with maybe new cross-sector partners, and because we really need new sorts of collaboration in order to make circular economy work. So don't just design the product, but design actually circular ecosystems with many partners. So with that, thank you, and happy to get your feedback or get in touch.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Rebecca. I think it's really important. I specifically your last point, to think about ecosystems, think the bigger picture. I mean, I'm sure the designer who started to put palm oil into each and every single product had all the great intentions of the world, and really wanted to do something very positive. But now we see that in other parts of that solution, there's a lot of problems that is causing in that setup. So you have to think in the bigger picture. Also, the example of the phone you mentioned, if you make a phone repairable and people can take it apart themselves, you have the questions of security, quality, and all of these things. So you have to think in the bigger ecosystem. Rebecca, I'm sure we'll come back to that also in the panel later. Thanks for now. Great. So let's move on. we will have the panel in the end after all the presentations. I have not seen any questions yet in the Q&A tab, so please feel free to already type them in now, so that we can start the ground, hit the ground running, I guess they say, once we do the panel with all of your questions. So please go over to the Q&A and type in your questions already now so that we can pick them up later. I saw that we have quite a diverse set of participants from Germany, from Finland, some from Australia, with very diverse different backgrounds. So we hope that all of you get something out of this session, some new, some exciting insights. With that, I'll move over to the next speaker. So Tapani is part of the Taival team. He's a very experienced designer who has been working with design, and specifically circular design and eco design, for many, many years. He's currently working with Fraunhofer ICM in Germany on eco design and circular design, and he's part of many of the projects we have at Taival in this context to move towards a circular design. But without much further words, Tapani, over to you.
Thanks, Michael. Let's see if I get my presentation share. Okay, could you see it?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Michael, and thanks, Rebecca. And Rebecca was covering pretty well already the challenges what we are facing. I will add one thing, that when I talk about circular design and I talk about designers, I don't mean from the educational background and the work title side designers. For me, designers means that all who are working in a new product or service development, they are all designers. And that's why this is so important for all of us. But let's jump into the presentation. Okay, here is the spaceship Earth, and our planet and modern lifestyle is under the pressure. We are facing at the same time so many ecological, political, economics, and social challenges, which cause global warming and scarcity of resources and biodiversity lost, and also the pandemic, the global health problems. And nowadays we even have horrible war in the middle of Europe. So we are facing lots of different challenges at the moment. So it's really game changer time at the moment. First of all, we could see already that customer demand is shifting. Customer will refuse to buy your product if there is more sustainable options in the market. So we really have to change also that. We could see already the EU and different countries, what we are doing, regulation, new directives and legal requirements coming all the time, and every company really have to understand what those means for them. Then we have also new competition emerges by rapidly evolving technologies, the whole digitalization, scarcity of components, materials, supply chains. I mean, it's really messy at the moment. And then we could look at also the investors, that investors are considering sustainability metrics as part of the investment decisions. Taxonomy is really good example of that. And now when we are looking also the planet Earth or the spaceship Earth, I mean, it's fully self-sufficient, contained. All material resources, everything what we have is given in here. And there is no other materials that we could get in this planet if we are not starting the mining in the space or something. Only renewable things what we get every day is the solar power from from Earth, but that's all. So what I'm saying here, that every single company, every single individual is directly dependent on nature. And it's really our task, our generation task, to fix all these problems now, if we don't want to give that as a heritage to our child, and at least I don't want to do that. So when we are looking, for example, in nature, there is not such a thing that waste. In nature, nothing is wasting, everything is recycled. When the tree dies, process of decomposition begins, and it's beginning of something new always. And it's also the mindset that waste doesn't exist until we waste it. And one of my friends said really well once that he thinks that waste is something that you haven't worked out how to use it. So I think that we really have to use our brains better on those. About this separation of nature and people, journey of separation. And we could see that 10,000 years ago, we were part of the nature, and we were living in balance and harmony on it. And then suddenly Francis Bacon, the English philosopher, write the book and said that we must slave the nature to serve our needs. And that is ongoing after that. So we think that we are the top of the pyramid, and everything is given for us on use. And it's really about ecosystem rather than ecosystem, how we actually treat the planet Earth at the moment. And we have to move forward more in an ecosystem that it's about us, and we are part of the nature, and we have to find the regenerative system to live in peace on that. So what I'm saying here is that the future tomorrow is designed today. And what is the best thing to be a human being is that still we have been given a power to choose where we are heading. So are we going in good? I'm pretty sure, and my clients especially, that employees are not willing to wait their companies to get climate friendly. They want to act, they want to learn more and act on those issues. So we really have to upskill our people. Or are we choose the bad, the dark side? And I believe workers want to do good rather than destroy the world. At least I have noticed that. So what I'm saying here is that change is inevitable, that circular economy is the systemic change, and it will fundamentally change how the products and businesses are made today. So we really have to speed up on here. About circular design. So it's all about, as the name circular design means, that it's really about creating and designing from linear to circular systems. And about the terminology a little bit in here, that what is the difference on eco-design and circular design? And this is more based on my own point of view in here, but eco-design was already launched in somewhere in 1995, 98, somewhere in there. But it really means more about looking the microscope, the micro, the small system, how we could create better products, and also taking care of environmental impacts in there. And then when we are looking the circular design side, it's more designing circularity and the macro large system thinking all the time. And yeah, designing the product in eco-design and product service systems. And it's pretty much still manufacturing and product focus. And circular design is more looking in a helicopter view and a system focus. Circular design is more about the product service ecosystem, what we try to achieve, and eco design is efficiency, circular design is more effectiveness, and eco design try to really handle the life cycle management, and circular design more in regenerative system. And really important also is that nowadays we try to reduce the negative impact of our product and services, but we have to move forward and try to maximize the positive impact what we are doing. Then a little bit about the thinking behind that. This is Stanford and ideas that every good product have to satisfy people needs, business needs, and technology needs. But as I said, it's not enough. Nowadays, we have to look at the overarching, the whole environmental, social, culture, politics, and other issues that goes around all of this. As Rebecca said, 80% of environmental impact is already made on design stage. And that really means that when we are looking EU new Green Deal and others, that sustainable products are new norm nowadays in EU. And it's, if you want to create a recyclable product or repairable products or all the other things, you have to design those to be that. So in design stage, you have to have the parameters, the specifications in a place. And here we could really see that our system, how it goes, and when we're starting with the linear system that make waste, we are wasting value all the time, adding value, and after use we create the waste. But in a circular economy, we really try to retain the value, that no waste will produce, that all the materials and others will prolong in use all the time. And here is, for example, one tool what we are using in a system level, that's how we actually do that. Each product is a deposit account for precious materials and should be designed so that they remain in useful use. And Franz van Houten, from CEO from Philips, said really smartly that if product is 5% more expensive to manufacture, but in 8 years you get 3% of its value back, then it's a good business case for the company. So we always have to think in the next larger things and the system level, are we getting those materials back? 3 cornerstones. So we have to make sure that it's something that people need. We have to look at the product and the system, and of course how we're doing our business, and all the time zooming in and zooming out in a micro level, and then also in a macro level, that how we actually make that happen. And this slide really shows that the journey what we are taking and the whole framework. So today's world is pretty much technology centered. We are looking the eco design side more in a product side. Then we have stepped already today more in a human centered, more in a experience and product service systems. And nowadays we are looking also sustainable business model design, that more in a system level, that looking more in a life planet side. And then, of course, collaborative ecosystem design, the whole ecosystem things, and where we are heading or where we should heading is the system of the system, that social, technical, ecological system in here. And a good sample of that is here, for example, the smart connected products and tractor is really good example of that in the past it was a standalone product that you need in farming, but now we have jumped more in a service economy, that they are smart connected products that you could maintain and collecting data that when it have to maintain and need service and things like that. But where we are heading is more data economy and product service system and product systems and system of the systems, that its tractor is so much more than a tractor. And here is a good sample of that is the John Deere smart farming system. What they have arrow of sensors that are sensoring the soil all the time and other parameters, how the crop is growing, and it's even sent automatically for third party that which kind of fertilizers the soil needs, and then they could offer that in the farmers and others. So it's part of the system. So here we could really see that now is time to really look at your businesses also, that is value based on product or is value based on service, and find a balance in here. Some of the products are totally on the green side and but I think that all the products nowadays are somewhere in the middle, more about that value is created in both sides. So new design criteria, why we actually designing a new products is really that, okay, new technologies and others, that we could actually create more better products, new products, that also the environmental impact is lower. Or today's technology, we could upgrade, make the old better, make it new again. So how we could maintain, how we could upgrade, and so on. And Rebecca already mentioned the last one, that don't invent what we don't really need. And my last slide in here is that, in nutshell, circular design. So circular design is chance to promote ecological innovation. Eco-designing a product or service means to make it desirable for people, minimize its environmental impact, and maximize its use and business impact along the life cycle by designing a circular system around to keep resources continuously reuse it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Tapani. And I think what this shows is that the macro picture, the ecosystem is critical, and combining digital technology with the need for circularity and think all of this together in the design process. Perfect. Thanks a lot, Tapani. We'll come back to the questions later on in the panel. And again, a reminder, your questions, you can put them into the Q&A. There are already some questions, so we will then take it from there. As the next speaker, I would like to welcome Mikko from UPM on stage. He has spent the past 16 years in commercialization and R&D at different companies, basically small and medium-sized to large stock-listed companies, basically in different industries, working from technical textiles to carbon fiber to plastic alternatives, all a very broad spectrum of different solutions. And today he will be talking about sustainable product design and the concept that's behind that at UPM. Mikko, stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you, Rebecca and Tapani, for the previous presentation. Very interesting, and as it happens in these webinars, you yourself also learn when you're presenting something, so very interesting presentations. All right, as mentioned, I'm here to discuss about the sustainable product design at UPM. Myself working at UPM Biocomposites, which is one part of UPM and one of the businesses belonging to biorefining division. Nevertheless, I do have the chance to work with the other other companies within the company of UPM, and the sustainable product design concept that we created has been created holistically to serve all the UPM businesses. But I use this opportunity for those who don't necessarily know UPM in detail, just in glance what we are about. You can see the numbers here. Some numbers that doesn't represent on this slide is that on top of all these numbers here and all the businesses we're serving, we also own about 2 million hectares of forest in Finland and in Uruguay, and all the forests that we are utilizing for the products, we are also reforesting also obviously. The businesses UPM has in a glance, there's many. Something people don't often know, neither here in Finland, that we are actually one of the biggest Nordic energy providers as well, which was also new when I entered UPM 3.5 years ago, but good to highlight that. Going into detail to the product sustainability and the sustainable product design, I think all of us have seen the change in the sustainability demands and the ambitious climate goals that different brand owners are setting publicly, and we are no different getting these expectations from the brand owners and customers towards us to build more sustainable products together with our customers. There is also increasing need for proven sustainability claims, whether that is based on LCAs or other facts to represent to the market, to the end consumers, to really provide a true and real sustainability claims. Also, the fast pace of change, in whether it's in regulations or supply chain, is demanding us to quickly change our view also as we go by. And also the UN Sustainability Development Goals that we are committed to are also forcing us to do things better in future, and sustainable product design concept was created for understanding better together, especially together with the customers, how the sustainable value proposition is built. UPM's own 2030 responsibility targets related to sustainable products are here. So the first one, development of new products and services with contribution to the UN goals, climate positive product portfolio by 2030, all applicable products eligible for eco-labeling by 2030. At the same time, as this is ambitious, we know that this is doable. The goals we set for sustainable product design concept at the beginning when we started to work with Taival was to support the steering of product development processes. And this is not to be highlighted enough. I think it is essential part, as my background is very much in the R&D and commercialization of material innovations. What I've seen in the previous, let's say, perhaps past 5 years or so, that the product development teams, they have had to adapt to take the sustainability also into consideration when building new products and designing new products. And this is something we try to enhance and do better also at UPM. Sometimes it's given that as we're utilizing something from the forest, something from the nature, where we are reforesting, the circular economy, as Tapani mentioned, within the nature. Still, as we're utilizing these assets of our world, I think it's important to understand at the product development stage already how sustainable our solutions actually at the end of the day are, and how they are built in for the circular economy. The other goal, to consider the whole life cycle in the design phase and to integrate the sustainable development goals in the product development. So this is very at the heart of our sustainable product design concept, that our own product development, but also the joint product development with our customers, is taken into consideration. And what was built during the process together with Taival is we built this together. First and foremost, what we needed to enhance, we understood quite quickly is the understanding of a customer, emphasizing the customer's needs, and truly building together the sustainable value proposition that is true and real. And basically what this in principle is to us is using design thinking as a vehicle for the development at the product development stage, but also at the commercialization stage. I think this can never be taken apart. There's of course research, but as we're developing a product that has an intention to hit the market, the cooperation and the dialogue together with the customer is essential for building something that is sustainable, not only in terms of business, but in terms of the solution itself for the environment. And then looking at the concept highlights, first and foremost, it supports and steers our product development projects. There are two phases of the concept: the investigating part and defining the problem, and the ideation, development, and delivery of the solution. And this investigating and defining the problem is exactly where we found out that we really need to enhance understanding the end customer. Use of design tools, which are many, Tapani mentioned, and so on. We also created our own toolbox of design tools that can be then applied and used. As you saw, we have plenty of different companies within the group, and these are serving different industries, and perhaps one tool is not fit for all. So there is a toolbox that we are utilizing, and each of the business is finding their own for their use, and there's a fit for purpose for me. Definition of sustainability value proposition, and as mentioned, this is something we need to build together with the customer, so that we don't create in vacuum something we believe is true. This is not necessarily true at our end customers' end, so we really need to take them into this road with us. It enables us to develop and offer truly sustainable product alternatives. And then when we go into the approach itself, the main drivers for designing sustainable products and services are regulation, trends, and markets. Regulation, to mention, is not only the supply chains that are under the fast changes, it's also the regulation field, as you know. There is currently, I think Rebecca mentioned something, that what designers should ask from themselves at product development stage is whether the material they're utilizing is truly sustainable. And I think at the time being, when looking at the regulation field and looking at different claims of different material providers, it may be difficult to identify which one is actually then the right decision to make. And this is, I think this will continue to be so, that there is this, let's say, a bit of mist or a bit of fogginess around when you're looking at different materials, as the regulation and is saying something, and it's not necessarily set every day, and it's changing quickly. And then again, material providers are doing their own claims about the sustainability. So what I believe is that you really need to look at the product that you are serving the market, and what that product actually requires from the material. First and foremost, of course, for durable use, but also for them that is actually and truly recyclable or repairable. The other highlight, sustainability needs to be addressed for the whole value chain. This is true. When I'm mentioning brand owners coming with the claims, it's not only brand owners currently, it's already the different tier levels of the value chain that we are discussing with at different industries, whether it's being automotive or then consumer goods. We see the change clearly. Our approach is divided into 6 life cycle steps. I go them quickly through. These are design, material, production, distribution, use, and circularity. And as mentioned, this tool set that we created, on top of that, we are of course utilizing our internal and external recipes for identifying the real LCA of our products and materials. And we have different laboratory analysis methods, obviously, whether it's then being biodegradability or recyclability or so forth. And then our approach is inspired by the sustainability guide. Then going to the steps, design. Rebecca also mentioned 80% of the environmental impacts are already built at the design stage. And I believe this is perfectly true. And this is what we need to take into consideration as well. Material, this is the point of maximizing the positive impact. Materials are also designed. They don't build in vacuum. Most of the material and material development technologies are already there. It's just by the means of imagination what can come out of. But not all the materials developed can truly provide and maximize the positive impact. And this is the stage where we are really securing the safe and responsibility source raw materials, and through that maximizing the positive impact. Production step, then how we see it at the time being, this is the part of minimizing the negative impact. Whenever something is produced, obviously CO2 is also consumed and built and created to the atmosphere. So this is the place where we can minimize the negative impact. Distribution, maximizing the efficiency of the supply chain and distribution chains. And use, fit for purpose, as I mentioned. It is essential to understand the use dates of a product. That's what we are working with, and emphasizing that into the product development stage, so that we actually design the product to ensure minimal energy, maximizing the positive impact and other resource consumption during its usage. And last but not least, circularity. Recyclability can be designed into a product, into a material already at the stage. Taking as an example of our biocomposite business, where we are providing an alternative for a current, or let's say more traditional plastic and compound combinations. It is sometimes a bit of chicken and egg problem when we come with the new compound to the market, plastic compound, where you have a bio-based filler within or bio-based feedstock in. It's not always said that it fits the current recycling streams. So we, for example, at this stage of product design, we need to develop, for example, take-back programs and build the recyclability and recycling means by ourselves. And this is truly possible. It's only about your ambition level and what you are willing to sacrifice for doing that. Sometimes it's a bit of a margin at the business case, but then again, you're doing good for the environment and for the whole thing. If there is one key takeaway, I think that it is that design is once again needed, and definitely at the time being when we're creating new products, we need design tools, we need design skills to truly capture sustainability at the product development stage and build sustainable value propositions that are true and real. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Mikko. I liked what you said about the raw materials, or the materials that you need to rethink from beginning to end the whole value chain, and that you need to keep the whole value chain in mind already when you design the product to start with, and think about take-back programs. That's also something we've been seeing when we looked at the plastic circle, that it's not one single player that can make a huge difference, but it's really thinking the full value chain. Perfect. Thanks, Mikko. I'll ask you back later to the panel. Again, sorry that I sound like a broken record, but you can put your questions into the questions tab as they pop up, so you don't have to wait until the panel later on. Next, I'm really happy to welcome Talke on stage. She leads the circular economy team at BASF, responsible for developing the global strategy around circular economy, fostering and implementation circular business models, circular innovation, and basically helping BASF on the transition towards circularity and the circular targets that they've been setting. So Talke, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thanks for the invitation. Let's share my screen. Can you see it well?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Get in presentation mode.
Presentation mode, yeah. That better?
No, it's
No. Sorry, once again.
yes, perfect.
Is it in presentation mode now or?
Yes, it's in
Okay, so, well, yeah, thanks. Thanks, Michael. Maybe one word to BASF before we start. I hope that a lot of you know BASF, but not all might know BASF. So it's a chemical company. As a chemical company, we are supplying B2B mostly, and we are basically selling into the automotive industry. We are selling into construction industry, into cosmetics, textiles, and a lot of different other industries. What I would like to talk to you about today is looking at the design angle and then taking that ideas from design and then apply it basically to a couple of very concrete examples of BASF and what we're doing. Now, not sure, but do you know Dieter Rams? Dieter Rams was actually a German product design legend, or still is, who had great influence, particularly in the 20th century, especially with his minimalist and timeless approach. He had the motto to say good design is as little design as possible, and also thoughtless design for thoughtless consumption is over. He already said that in 1976, and basically when you look at what has happened since he already realized that, we are now in 2022, and in the world globally we have around 375 million tons of plastics that are produced globally, and out of those 65% are basically used in short lifespan applications. So we've come a long way, but really in the wrong direction. When you also then look at what is already being recycled of those, you see that globally it's only 14% that is recycled, mainly mechanically recycled. The numbers look a little bit better when you look at Europe. In Europe, it's around 1/3 that's being recycled, but globally the number is really, really low. So what does that now mean for us, and where can we as BASF sort of take part in circular economy and change in different ways? So we have set up ourselves, or given ourselves, a strategy to look at basically 3 different areas where we want to focus on, where we want to contribute to circular economy. As a chemical company, we use a lot of feedstocks. So we use a lot of oil and gas-based feedstocks, basically. So one of the cornerstones of the strategy is, of course, to move away from those and look at where can we find renewable or recycled feedstocks to replace them. The second block here is on new material cycles. So we are looking at the materials that we sell, which are then used by our customers and end customers, and want to create ecosystems basically to recycle those. So thinking of battery materials, thinking of shoes, for example, textiles, mattresses, these kind of things. We are working on solutions to directly design the products that are made with our products. And that requires a lot of collaboration with the whole ecosystem. The third block here we call new business models. That's more about really designing new business models, particularly in the area of, for example, paper performance models, going more for digital solutions, really decoupling growth from resource consumptions when we look at our business. Now I will go through the 3 of them to give you some examples. For the circular feedstocks, I mentioned that we are looking at renewable feedstocks and recycled feedstocks, and we want to replace more and more the oil and gas-based part. So in terms of renewable feedstocks, there we are, for example, looking at residues from agricultural production or food processing. We then apply that with our biomass balance approach to include that into our production process. The other option is to look at really dedicated bio-based products. Here, it's very important that we source sustainably, for example, RSPO certified, etc. So these are activities in terms of renewables, lots of projects going on there. Then for recycled feedstock, I would like to mention one project we're doing currently, or now ongoing, which is called ChemCycling. Here we're looking at how can we recycle those parts of, for example, plastics that are not yet able to recycle them mechanically. So looking one step deeper into our ChemCycling project, you see here a picture of mixed plastic wastes. And currently, if you think about, for example, in Germany, the yellow bag, 50% of the yellow bag cannot be recycled because plastics are mixed. For example, cheese packaging, the different layers are glued to each other. You cannot separate it. And you also cannot recycle that mechanically. So we are addressing that part of mixed plastic waste, which currently has to be incinerated, and are developing here together with partners a process which is called pyrolysis. And with that process, we are basically generating an oil that is very similar to the oil that we use that is fossil-based, and therefore we are replacing more and more fossils by using that ChemCycling process. The same actually can be done with tires, for example. With tires, we've done a project, for example, one of them is with VD, that's a German outdoor brand. You see here jackets or trousers. So here with our partner VD, they have used the products that were originally coming from tires and have then been reformulated and reused as raw materials for textiles in the end. Then looking at new material cycles. One example here I'd like to mention is battery recycling. So we are also selling battery materials. And of course, very early on, it was important to look at what can we do with the batteries when they're end of life. And that's not only technically challenging to recycle a battery, it's also challenging because you have to think about the whole ecosystem. How do you actually collect the batteries again? Who has what kind of role in the whole ecosystem set up? How do you do the logistics? How do you also do tracking and tracing of batteries, etc.? So that's an area that we're working on currently. And I wanted to mention it because it's not only about the R&D part, it also has a lot to do with actually setting up business models, setting up ecosystems, which might seem to be easier, but which can also be very, very challenging in that. Second example I would like to share with you here is on mattress recycling. So here in Europe alone, around 30 million mattresses are thrown away every year. And we are working on actually recovering those. So we are working on basically recovering the polyols, recovering the chemicals from that by collecting, shredding, and then producing new mattresses out of that again. And here, some countries in Europe have already collection systems like the Netherlands or Belgium. But for example, in Germany, there is not yet a collection system set up. So here, again, another example where we have to work also with governments and also with other companies that are collecting and setting up whole collection systems, because otherwise we will not be able to have a setup where we can actually get enough volumes that our process can work. Then coming to new business models, that's an interesting one. And I also find it quite interesting that Tapani already mentioned the example of John Deere and the digital farming. This example here goes into a similar direction. So BASF is also selling crop protection. And one business model that we have developed is actually to not sell the product anymore, but to actually sell a healthy field or a healthy plant. So our customers, the farmers, will get a compensation if the health of the leaf is not according to what was defined upfront. And that is actually tracked and monitored by an app. And that is interesting because that incentivizes us as BASF not to sell more volume, but it actually incentivizes us to be as resource efficient as possible. And I really like those kind of business model examples, because that's, I think, the way we should go. That's thinking much more in terms of pay per performance than pay for volumes. And that is also, I think, a question of how do you design then business models that the two players, or let's say the variety of players, is actually incentivized to save resources in the end. Now, how do we steer that in BASF? How do we work on those R&D designs? We have set up a program which we call Circular Economy Co-Funding, where we are incentivizing those colleagues, employees that are coming with ideas. We are co-funding that with 50% if they have ideas for circular economy approaches for our products or for processes. And then we are coaching them. They will become part of our circular economy community. And we are basically leading them through, hopefully then scaling up and operating and launching basically products or processes to the market. Also, in our whole R&D process, basically, we have included sustainability criteria. So whenever new products are being developed, there needs to be a check on certain sustainability criteria before they can pass basically to the next gate in the R&D process. So those are some setups, design of the processes where we want to foster a circular economy also in R&D early on, and then moving through the whole process to come to market. Okay, with that, I would like to close, thinking again back to Dieter Rams, who said good design is as little design as possible, taking his ideas for design actually in mind, not only when it comes to products, but also when it comes actually to business model design. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Talke. I think it's becoming a theme across all of the different presentations, that it's going away from the old business models, thinking more long-term on the macro level, and really catering for these small pilots to then scale them up. Could I ask all the speakers back on stage for the panel discussion, and then we will go into the questions. Again, if you have questions, type them into the Q&A tab that you find is as part of the panel, not into the chat, but into the Q&A. We will also monitor the chat, so if you by mistake type something in there, then we'll also pick it up from there. Let me maybe start with a question from Frank, because I think this is a very good question. It's formulated as a question around entrepreneurship, but I think it applies to all companies. So I'll read it. What could be an answer to entrepreneurs who are afraid of making their products more durable and repairable because they are afraid of selling less and losing growth? So as we're shifting from the linear model, which is about selling as much as possible, and we're moving towards a model where we sell less because it's repairable, it's longer in use. What's your experience? What would be your advice for entrepreneurs, but I think also for companies in general? And Talke, you mentioned already some examples. Do you want to maybe continue from there and go first?
I think it's a very good question, because that's also what we experience. Of course, it's important that products are durable and repairable, and we would also put a focus on that. And I think it's then about designing the business model in a different way to still make sure that you earn money. And I think also, Tapani, you mentioned that we cannot tell the companies that now all of a sudden you should stop making money, right? So you have to think of different ways of, for example, going more into, let's say, services or somehow digital-based models. So we have to find an alternative way, and we cannot say, okay, stop selling that. So I think that would be a start of an answer.
Mm. Thanks, Talke. Mikko.
Yeah, perhaps a very important question and interesting to elaborate that. I've been recently also thinking of this linkage between physical and digital world, and how that could enable new type of business models, providing perhaps, if it's not, it's easy to say that let's then switch to service economy more. How you build service around a material, perhaps, yeah, repairing is one thing. One is then licensing out something, perhaps, and so forth. But something I consider as an interesting phenomenon currently is NFT technology, and how we could perhaps somehow link this together with the physical goods that we sell. I don't have a clear answer, but I would encourage to try new things, because this is exactly, we don't know what will work. So what I would encourage for is trying new things and being open towards your customers about the new opportunity that you may see as a business model. And what I refer back to the presentation and this sustainable product design concept, taking the customer on the journey, creating that, and going to the ecosystem. I think it is a mist a bit. We're walking in a mist, but we'll find a way.
Perfect. Thanks, Mikko. Rebecca, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, essentially we're talking about sufficiency, right? And it is the most difficult question in the circular economy or the economy altogether. I actually have a master's student who currently is looking at how much sufficiency-based business models are already being implemented. And of course, it is what Talke has already said. It is mostly looking at service. It is also, of course, looking at optimizing the use of assets, right? But I think ultimately we got to think about, like, what does sufficiency actually mean? And sufficient means to have enough, right? And when we think of that, it also means how much do we actually need? And I think it is, in the end, a very difficult question for our current economic system. That means we think very short term, and we need to have high turnover and make lots of money in order to satisfy investors. And I think essentially companies can't solve this by themselves. I think we need a new economic system where we look at not just gross domestic product, but where we measure a different way of what a good life and what enough is, so everyone can have an equal chance on this planet. So I think the answer in the end is that politicians will have to ask themselves very hard questions and change the way we measure success and well-being.
Thanks, Rebecca. Very, very good point. Tapani.
Yeah. Excellent, and I'm facing this question daily, honestly. Of course, as everyone said already, it's pretty much the business model. It needs certain business model changes, but I would take the perspective more how to continue with your current business model. And I think that first of all, if you are adding the quality, if you are creating a superior product comparing your competitors and others, so branding, communication, all that, could you put a higher price tag on it? I know it's a risk, but still, if you have evidences that and you are communicating that we are using these precious materials because of this, or the circularity of it, that it's fully applied the circular economy principles when you have designed that. So differentiate yourself in a brand level. Other things from government and other side, that I think that this type of product should be supported by lower custom prices or taxes or something, how we could actually support and encourage the company go on this path, that it creates some kind of competitive advantage also to go on that path.
Thanks. And I think what we've been learning is that there is a huge market opportunity for these services. So specifically, if we think entrepreneurial, I mean, my experience is I had a stereo system that was broken, and I tried to get it fixed, and I couldn't find one single place in the whole city that would fix my old stereo system. So there's also an opportunity at the same time to provide these services and be in that space. You already touched a little bit on it, and it's Bernard has a question, I think, that touches on the systemic environment and the systemic setup, but also the mindset. It's a long question, so let me paraphrase a little bit. It's about the trade-off between biodiversity, circularity, and all of these, but at the same time also about the systems that we've been building. And Bernard is specifically referring to the agricultural system that Tapani, you and Talke, you have already mentioned, that there is a system today in place that is using chemicals, pesticides, and all of these things just because the system requires it. How do we go about to change these very well established systems with a model, Talke, as that you mentioned, where it's about using less chemicals and selling the impact rather than selling the pure product? How do we educate? How do we change these systems to pick up this new way of thinking? Any thoughts on that? Any experiences?
I mean, I think it goes hand in hand with developing the digital solutions as well. And that's what Tapani also showed, right? So when you think about a field, an agricultural field, and of course you need the fields because we will soon have 10 million people on Earth and we need to feed them. But do we really need to spray the complete field with pesticides, or is it better to, you know, be very specific, have an IT monitored system, what you saw in Tapani's picture there, that goes over the field. You have cameras that detect the ill plant and then spray very, very directly and at the plant, which would actually mean that you need maybe only 10% of the volumes sprayed on the field before. Now you need much less, and you can save a lot of biodiversity because you're only using the crop protection materials for the affected part. I think that's already a very good solution that is possible also now in recent years because digitalization has improved much, because computers and cameras can detect the problems. It wouldn't be possible to walk over the field and do that all manually, right? So that's, I think, already one aspect, is that digitalization is supporting that development.
Rebecca, how do you see that from the WWF point of view, this systemic change and also the trade-off between these different targets that we have, biodiversity, fresh water, CO2, circularity? I think there's a lot of different things that are not always supporting each other.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's no easy answer, as the same as with the previous question. I think with these kind of solutions, I mean, firstly, we need to ask ourselves harder questions. I think efficiency isn't enough. I think efficiency is an important piece of the puzzle. And, you know, what Talke just said, this example is helpful, but it's not gonna save us, let's say. So I think we need to look at all the aspects of sustainability, like not just efficiency, but consistency and sufficiency as well. And in the end, like it's maybe not what everyone is here, but we do need to look at it case by case. So every time you look at a solution, you got to look at what is the best solution with everything we need to know. We do know right now. So it's looking at everything we need to know. So this holistic perspective that I think Mikko also mentioned in his presentation, and using life cycle analysis, improving those life cycle analysis because they're not enough right now, and then re-evaluating every few years as more information and data arises.
Perfect, thank you. Mikko, there's one question around ecosystems. How do you build successful ecosystems? Because we've been talking a lot about looking at the macro picture, looking at the big picture, bringing all of this together. And there's one question, circular economy concepts aim to minimize consumption. No, sorry, I read the wrong one. This one, how do you see the challenge of developing new circular business models and ecosystems? As an SME, small, medium-sized enterprise, it might be difficult to find ecosystem partners and be part of such an ecosystem. What tips do you have that you can give how to start building these ecosystems and engaging along the value chain?
This is a great question again, and I have quite a lot of experience on building ecosystems, and how has those occurred or happened has always been so that there has been a vision of what the ecosystem could do together for each other's good or the overall good. One example I could perhaps highlight here, and you could take a look at the ecosystem manual built by one party. I was building a Lookstream 5G ecosystem back in the days together with Nokia, Lassila, and others. How this all started was a vision of lighting poles being equipped with 5G antennas, and the question that arose at each one of the ecosystem members when I started to pitch the vision around the companies was that, is this truly possible? And when you don't know, there's something to research and there's something for the whole ecosystem to take a look further into. So I would say that one thing is to have vision and one thing is to have will. And this usually on a personal level, whether you are a sole entrepreneur trying to build ecosystem, of course you need to have the networks. But hey, today I would say the building network is perhaps easier than ever before. We have LinkedIn, we have all the means connecting with people, and it can start by just one conversation. So if there's someone looking for an ecosystem for a specific issue, one can start by having a discussion with one of the panelists here, perhaps, and that could be the beginning.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Mikko. We're unfortunately running out of time. Tapani, maybe a last question to you about open design and the use of design principles also across different companies, because very often product design R&D is very secretive and it's specific for the company. It's done in the basement or protected areas. How do you see the possibility of sharing designs, having common design principles across an ecosystem and really building these broader design principles?
Yeah, really good question. And yeah, I think that the overall the design process and circular design framework is really structural way to solving those wicked problems, and tools are just helping you and bringing that that way that we find out. And secondly is also that companies are working a little bit too much in the silos. Different departments are working, different disciplines are working with different topics, and design is a nice sandbox that brings, and the design process brings people together to solving those problems, because you need so many point of views to find out on a way. I think that overall in a helicopter view, the process is what Mikko was showing, that first identify the problem and challenges, and having a common understanding that you could actually step in and creating possible solution that, and then the second diamond also that I think that it always works, but of course you have to tailor a different type of methods and tools and practices in different topics and different businesses. But I think that overall it's all about design thinking still.
Perfect. Thanks everyone. We're unfortunately out of time. Thanks to all the presenters, the panelists. Very, very interesting. And as always, I guess we could carry on with the discussion for hours and still have new questions. As I think Mikko, you said, we're right in the middle of this major transformation, and it's not only one transformation, it's several transformations that are happening at the same time. So it's really about trying, testing, working together, sometimes even with unlikely partners that you might not have thought about, and rethink how we approach products, services, the mix out of all of those. Thanks, everyone. Before I close, I still have a couple of things I would like to share. So one is we have a LinkedIn group. So if you're interested to continue the discussion afterwards, the LinkedIn group is called Digitally Circular. There you can also find announcement of future digitally circular events and as well as other discussions and announcements that are touching the topic that we discussed today. So head over to LinkedIn, feel free to join the group there. It's a private group, so you need to ask to be permitted in, but we're looking regularly at the requests and we will then invite you to the group. To other topics, you can head over to taival.com. The Aha Moments has a lot of further reading on the topic of circularity, circular design. There's also some recordings of earlier sessions that Tapani, together with another member of our team, Max, has been giving on the topic. And if you're interested in the circular economy rating that I mentioned earlier, you can head over to the circular economy rating page and find more information there. And remember to follow us on LinkedIn if you want to get future updates about future events or future things that are happening. With that, thanks again to everyone, to all the speakers for the very insightful presentations. Really got a lot of new insights, new ideas on the topic that I will for sure be using in future projects and future discussions. Thanks for everyone for joining, for sharing your questions. And I hope you have a good rest of the day wherever you are, and stay circular. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.